Welcome to this video presentation of Memorandum of Understanding and Letter of Assist negotiations and the preparations for these negotiations. After this presentation, you should be able to explain the importance and structure of the Memorandum of Understanding and the negotiation procedures. Distinguish between the contingent own equipment, the letter of assist, and the Memorandum of Understanding, and how those three are connected. In earlier presentations, we have explained that the Memorandum of Understanding is a contract between the United Nations and the troop or police contributor and establish the responsibility amongst the United Nations headquarters, United Nations mission, and the troop police contributor. The main document is adopted by the General Assembly, ergo non-negotiable. By signing the Memorandum of Understanding, we have accepted our responsibilities within the TCC generic guidelines, the Statement of Unit Requirement, and the COE manual. These three documents are all annexes to the Memorandum of Understanding. In the Memorandum of Understanding, we only negotiate the annexes, Annex A, which is number of troops, Annex B, which is the number of major equipment, and Annex C, which is the self-sustainment responsibilities. Both the Memorandum of Understanding and the Letter of Assist is the documentation for reimbursement. Letter of Assist is for services and Memorandum of Understanding is for units. Letter of Assist is a legal binding contractual document for procurement of services on behalf of the United Nations. United Nations provides from the troop or police contributor, or the troop or police contributor will provide services directly to the mission. The Letter of Assist contains the requirement for the service delivered and the details on the reimbursement from the United Nations. The negotiation of a Memorandum of Understanding or a Letter of Assist is always conducted at the United Nations headquarters in New York. It is important that the troop or police contributors delegation have the proper authority to negotiate with the United Nations headquarters. The delegation need to have the correct information of available troops and equipment so that what is agreed during the negotiations also will be deployed or delivered in the United Nations mission. The delegation also needs to have a proper participation. The United Nations recommends that the delegation includes military officer, preferably the commanding officer of a unit, logistic officer who knows the national equipment and the national self-sustainment capabilities, relevant officers, for instance, medical officers for a hospital, engineer officer for engineer unit, etc. Finance officer or an COE expert, movement control officer, lawyer, national headquarters representatives who will support the unit from home. The United Nations Secretariat has no rules regarding the size of a troop police contributor's delegation, but the troop police contributor is responsible for own expenses during the negotiation. The main Memorandum of Understanding document is not open for negotiation, as mentioned before. Most of the annexes is also not open for negotiation. So what can we negotiate? We can negotiate the size of the unit's main equipment, similar to the table of organization and equipment, and what logistic responsibility the unit has in the mission. So we negotiate Annex A, the number of troops or police personnel, Annex B, the major equipment, the equipment the unit needs to solve its task, Annex C, self-sustainment responsibilities, similar to logistic responsibilities. The content of Annex B and Annex C in the Memorandum of Understanding is explained in details in the COE manual. In the TCC generic guidelines presentation, we learned that the national support element is not a part of the United Nations force or the Memorandum of Understanding. However, the national support element is included in the status of force agreement between the United Nations and the host nation. Therefore, the national support element has to be mentioned in the Annex A, minimum as a footnote. Annex C has an appendix regarding national welfare and internet in the mission. The troop or police contributor has to fill out this appendix during the negotiations. For clarifying the starting point of the deployment, the troop or police contributor has to inform the United Nations regarding agreed airport of embarkation and seaport of embarkation in national country. The troop or police contributor also has to inform the United Nations where all major equipment and self-sustainment equipment is stored back home. The preparations for the negotiations starts already at day one. This is not a one-man job, it's a team effort. We have to involve all relevant national levels in the decision-making and preparations to the negotiations as early as possible. We have received a lot of documents and demands or tasks from the United Nations. We have the note verbal, who tells that which mission we are going to. We have the statement of unit requirement. We have the TCC generic guidelines. We should also have a complete national table of organization and equipment, which includes photos of all major equipment and the self-sustainment equipment. We have or we know the national logistic concept, and we know how the logistic support is organized back home. We need to rewrite all national names and categories of major equipment into United Nations generic names and categories used in the COE manual and in the Memorandum of Understanding. We need to develop the Welfare and Internet Appendix 2 in the MOU Annex C. The recce report from our recce to the mission prior to the deployment will probably result in changes of equipment or self-sustainment logistic support. We need to address the deployment issues. Where is the equipment stored back home? Possible airports of embarkations and or seaports of embarkations. Finally, we need to prepare argumentations for the operational need of equipment and or the relationship between personnel and equipment. This argumentation is vital for the actual negotiations with the United Nations. Good dialogue with both the permanent mission and United Nations headquarters and Department of Operational Support prior to the negotiations will normally solve a lot of issues and create mutual trust for the actual negotiation. This dialogue will also pinpoint areas that we will need negotiation. Look for solutions, not only problems. Negotiations is often both give and take. The United Nations will always be well prepared for negotiations and have representatives from the Uniform Capability to Support Division inside Department of Operations Support, the Force Generation Service or the Police Division both from Department of Peace Operations, the Logistic Division within Department of Operational Support, and subject matter experts coming from both departments. The United Nations negotiation team will suggest discussing and agree upon annex by annex and line by line. The negotiation will be polite with proper discussions. Discussions will be both at a general level and deep down in details regarding equipment or logistic performance. Issues that need more documentations, information, or clarifications will be pushed to the next day. This will give the United Nations time to confer with the missions and the troop of police contributors to confer with the national authority back home. Even if the negotiations has ended, the work is not over. We have to make sure that all national levels, both back home and in the mission, has a copy of the agreed Memorandum of Understanding, Annex A, Annex B, and Annex C, included the welfare and internet appendix, copy of the agreed letter of assist, and photos of all equipment mentioned in either the Memorandum of Understanding or in the letter of assist. We have in this presentation introduced you to the Memorandum of Understanding and the letter of assist negotiations with the United Nations. Key takeaway: involve all relevant national actors as early as possible. Active dialogue and coordination with both the permanent mission and the United Nations headquarters, Department of Operations Support. Thank you for following this presentation.